Are you even listening to me? Have you ever heard that question from someone? I would venture to guess that we all have at one time or another. Well, this week on Wonderfully Weird Living with Pastor Drake, we'll be challenged to be listeners rather than just hearers. Drake Hunter is senior pastor at Elevating Life Church in Fort Morgan, Colorado, founder of the nonprofit 4Dimensional Living, as well as the author of 3 books, including his latest, Wonderfully Weird, and the soon-to-be-published 4th book, Wonderfully Weird Goodness. Now, this week's edition of Wonderfully Weird Living with Pastor Drake Hunter. Welcome back once again to Wonderfully Weird Living. I'm your host, John Waters. With me, of course, Pastor Drake. Hello.
Hello. Good to see you, John.
Well, it's always a pleasure to come with you here on the show, and as we work our way through the wonderfully weird commands of Christ to help people to achieve goodness in their life.
We're getting through them, and it's exciting because as we put each one in place, it just gets us, that much more closer in the sense of being more like Jesus, and that's what this program is all about: is truly becoming more like Jesus, so that we can truly be the reflection of what goodness is in this world. So yeah, I'm always excited for our time together and for really helping people understand what the wonderfully weird commands are all about.
Well, and hopefully, Drake, folks are beginning to see how these commands that Jesus gave us really build upon each other, starting with that foundation of repent,
yes,
and then continuing to add the building blocks into our character.
Yeah, and the teachings are so important, because if we don't understand these teachings, and we'll say even systematically, you don't necessarily need to learn them that way, but it really helps, because then you can understand how things increase and grow incrementally, if you will, through those teachings. But vital in the sense of developing in our faith and truly becoming, as I shared already, more like Jesus. And so here we are.
Yep.
And we're on command number 16.
Well, and this one, Wonderfully Weird command number 16, one of those that either is misinterpreted,
yes,
or misused, or absolutely scares people to death.
Or completely ignored.
Or completely ignored, yes.
And so we read it time and time, and most people know it because it's so familiar, not only in the church, but just in the secular realm. People know these verses that we're going to share. So yes, good night. Let me share this up front. I'm going to encourage everyone to listen on this particular command, because it will change your life if you apply it and get it into your makeup. So again, so that we can become better people, so that other people can see the goodness of Christ.
Well, folks are wondering what the command is. It's 2 simple words.
Yes.
Judge not.
Wow. Judge not. That's the direction we're going to go. But hey, let me share this. The topic, though, is going to listen to gain wisdom. Why do we not want to judge not? Because we want to gain wisdom. Folks, we have to understand the goal of every Christian, not just a few, but every Christian, every disciple of Christ, is to truly go after wisdom and gain wisdom, so that then we can live in the ways of Jesus, that reality, that lifestyle, so that we can truly reap the benefits of the promised land, of the benefits of God. We can live in the blessings of God and not the cursing. So I encourage everyone to put this on your to-do list, your project list, your goal, to truly develop wisdom where it will benefit you, yes, and we're going to talk about self, but also others and the entire world in the sense of the Great Commission, where we're truly developing God's kingdom in our day and age.
Well, the question I asked in the opening for the program here today was one that I think all of us have heard at different times. Are you even listening to me? I know I've heard that.
What's that? I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Okay.
I know I've heard that from my wife on numerous occasions. But that is very important, because there is a difference, a huge difference between listening and hearing.
Yes. And you've got to know what you're listening for. Because we can say we're listening, and there's people that do have skills, but let me ask, what's your end result? What are you after? What are you listening for? Especially in the common grace of our faith, what are you listening for so that you can grab onto that information, discern it well to get to wherever you need to be with that information and with that listening? Because we can be good listeners, but if there's no end result, where there's no vision, the people perish. You'll still have the skill, but no result. We just become busybodies in our listening. So very important to understand that too. We learn it, but with an end result in mind. We want that vision of goodness to be the ultimate vision, if you will, so that then we can resolve problems or have good communication or really have good relationships where we're truly connecting in a way that we're better together.
Would it be fair to say that in general terms that listening is active but hearing is passive?
Absolutely. I would say absolutely on that one. And good night. Most were born and we can hear.
Right.
And so, and then without any knowledge or understanding or insight in that, if you never put any, let's say, time or practice into that or understanding, you're just passively living. And so, yeah, absolutely. I would say the best way to put it.
Well, and I guess that brings up the verse, don't just be hearers of the word, be doers of the word.
Absolutely.
In other words, don't be passive, be active.
Yeah, and that word hearer there, is you got to be a listener. You got to learn how to listen. And so let's kind of transition over to Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 6. We'll read through it, and we're going to be intentional in a couple of things today. We want to, first and foremost, understand what listening is and why it's so important. There's many, many reasons why it's important. And then we're going to kind of wrap things up by sharing some skills that you can put in place so that then you have the ability to truly listen, that then you can get to that place, that desired result you want in, let's say, most of your relationship. And I say most because other people won't listen sometimes. And so when you're both listening and you're really active in communication and all that, boy, the end result, it always comes out well. So let's go back to Matthew 7 and let's read that to set the tone here in the lesson. So here in Matthew 7, verses 1 through 6, of course, this is Jesus teaching. And he says, do not judge. That's verse 1, or you will be judged. Verse 2, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Verse 3, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention? Do not listen to the plank in your own eye. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your eye? Verse 5, you hypocrite. Wow. John, I just need to pause there. Can you imagine if we used that word on the platform Sunday morning? Oh, my goodness. Jesus used it. You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, if you throw your pearls to those people that are not listening, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Now, we have two commands here. We have, of course, judge not, and then we see that next command that we're going to talk about next week. That is, do not cast your pearls. But it's so important to understand that command with this command, because once we have proper listening and understanding in place, we can discern if we're going to be discreet or not. And we'll talk about that next week. But this week, it's judge not. So with this wonderfully word command, what it's doing, it's informing us that we need to learn to listen. First, now I need to say this, to self, then to others. So let's pause there, John, and have some thought here, because I think this is so important, because this is where the issue truly lies in the sense of the Christian faith, is because we want to serve others, and that's good and that's well. But at the same time, what we have to do, though, is we have to, as Paul shared with Timothy, we've got to take care of ourselves first. And we have to learn to listen to ourselves to make sure that we are aligning ourselves with God. Because if we don't do that, we'll miss the mark. And then when we're not actually performing in that way, what happens is we lean in our own understanding. Then we give advice to others thinking it's from God, and it is not, because you're leaning into your own understanding because you don't listen first and foremost to yourself, and then you're going to do your faith your way, and it goes on and on and on. So how important is that? Let's kind of just park it here for a while to learn to listen to self.
Well, and that's where you gain wisdom by searching the scripture and listening to God and praying for wisdom.
That's right. Now, with that, and let me share this, we've got to understand what wisdom is. And of course, we can learn what that is through reading the book of Proverbs. But let me just quickly, what is wisdom? Well, wisdom is having the ability to think and act, we'll say like Jesus, which Jesus is God, but having the ability to think and act with knowledge, we'll say experience and understanding, we'll say common sense in the faith, along with insight. Now, there's 7 pillars of wisdom, and I didn't name them all there, but at the same time, generally speaking, that's what wisdom is, and that's what we need to listen for. Knowledge. How much knowledge do you have? Are you listening to yourself? Is it opinion or is it knowledge? Right? Or let's go to the experience. We have a lot of experience. Anybody that's been alive longer than 10 years, you have a lot of experience. Why? Because we go through 6, 7, 8 different experiences in one given day. But are you listening? Let me say this. If you're not reflecting on some of those key experiences that you have, you cannot gain insight. Think about that. That is a Christian, it should be a human being's discipline, is to reflect on our experiences so that we can gain insight. And again, reflect compared to or parallel to wisdom so that we can gain then understanding that truly will allow us to truly have those treasures. And recall a couple of weeks ago, lay up those treasures so that we can truly make a difference in this world with God and others, where we're truly moving goodness forward in our day and age for all eternity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned the pillars of wisdom,
yes,
and one of those that fits so well here is sound judgment.
Yes, and that goes exactly with this command: judge not. Now, one of the pillars of wisdom is sound judgment. So, are we free to judge? Absolutely. However, we know what Jesus is talking about in this command. We're judging based on man's patterns or reality rather than God's. Jesus knows this. We know this. And we have to stop that, dispute it, and change things by putting new teachings in place so that we can truly then become sound. We can go after sound judgment, which requires listening. Listening to what? Again, those different areas we just mentioned. And so, yes, those, the 7 pillars, there's a lot have been preached on this, but it's kind of passive again. When you get to, I believe, if I recall off the top of my mind, get to Proverbs 8, and it lists the different pillars of wisdom, we just kind of read through them. We don't listen to them. We're not listening to what it's saying. We hear it, and then we just move on, let's say, to chapter 9 that talks about building the house of wisdom. And we just kind of pass along, as you were saying earlier. We just hear it, and we don't truly listen. So listening is putting that effort into it. And first and foremost, you've got to listen to yourself first, and be brutally honest. And this is humility. You got to be open and understand that. Okay, well, if I'm to listen to knowledge, what knowledge do I truly have? Mm-hmm. For instance, I just shared the described wisdom. And you could go out there, generally speaking, and that's exactly what it is in its knowledge, rather than my opinion, because I could sit here and give my opinion. Well, I think it's this based on my experience. And well, that's fine, but you've got to get the knowledge there, or you're not, let's say, at the first step of sound judgment, because if that's not there. So my point here, listen to yourself and be brutally honest compared to the object of our faith, God. His nature, his history, let's say, and we can even say his design. Do you truly have knowledge in that? Or are you just subjective in all of that and you come up with your own opinion? It's huge, John.
Yeah.
And so once we have knowledge, now we got to be careful because knowledge puffs up. But this is only one aspect or one factor of wisdom and what we need to be listening for. And so listen to self. Now, we don't have time to go through every one of these factors of wisdom, but I hope you sense the tone and hear the passion that it is so important that we truly lean into knowing this, understanding what it is, experience it, figure out what all that is in common grace, the common grace of Jesus and in life, and then gaining that insight again so that we can truly, again, be people that are reflecting the image of God rather than the image of man.
You mentioned early on as we started here today, Drake, that listening truly is a skill. It's not something that just falls on you. You are able to hear when you're born, but listening is a skill. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was in the military for 20 plus years, and the one thing they do so well is train. Now, I'll be brutally honest here. Was it under oppression? Yes, that's kind of how the military works. But if I had the opportunity to go back, I would actually open myself up to really learn what that is. The only reason I learned it back then was because I was required. I lived under the military. Can I say under the law? And so it was given to me. I was resisting it, but I was doing it because I didn't want to pay the penalty or the curses of the military. But I came, when I retired and I reflected on that whole experience, I came back and said, wow, you know what? I missed an opportunity there, but I can still gain a lot of learning. And it was the military experience that really helped me communicate in the sense of listening as well as speaking, as well as really managing myself through the emotions that you go through with all of that put together. And so it is a skill. And just like a heart surgeon, you want a heart surgeon to have skills. You want them to have the ability. And of course, we know ability is part of trust. And so if you have the ability or the skill, then people will trust you, and you'll know if you're listening properly who you can trust and not trust. Huge,
right?
Because trust is the foundation of our faith and the foundation of leadership and everything that is life.
For sure.
Does that help? Is that what you're after, John?
Yeah. Well, so let's break it down a little bit for us. The skill of listening.
You bet. I always think of James, chapter 1, verse 5, when it comes to our responsibility of listening. Now, James is speaking to an audience that is scattered Christians, and they're not getting it, and they lack wisdom. And so he shares this: if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. So we're going to pause here because there is no excuse, Christian. And we have to step away from excuses and say, okay, we've got to step into this reality because we can gain wisdom no matter who we are without fault. Either the scripture is lying to us or it's us. Guess which one it is, John? And it will be given to you. So we have to, again, go after wisdom. We got to know what it is because once we know what it is, we know what to listen for. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So listening is one of the most important skills that a person can have for a number of reasons. And let's just kind of go through some of those reasons so that we have a true understanding why it is so important. First and foremost, this is huge, outside of trust, sorry. So it'll be first and second foremost. Listening tells you what reality is. We got to pause here. One of the greatest character strengths somebody can have now is knowing, there's ability, how to see and face reality. But when you're not listening, you'll never understand or face reality properly. And reality has both good and bad. All things work for the glory of God. So one reason is listening tells you what reality is, good or bad. Another reason is listening is the only time you are learning. Yep. Fireworks all over the place.
Mic drop.
Mic drop, yes, because when you're not listening, how can you learn? And it's critical that we are learning. In fact, it's our faith. We've got to understand. You got to learn so you can understand, so you can apply, so that you can truly grow in the way that you're intended to grow, physically and spiritually in the faith. So another reason, this is huge, and I've already went in this direction, but let's go there again. Listening is the only thing a person can do to initially drive trust to process it forward. Why? Because we know the first step in trusting is understanding. Going back to the character thought, another ability is people with a good, solid character, and I just sent you the chapter 1 there, John, last week.
Right.
I'm writing that book, Good Character. Well, we know this. When somebody has the ability to create and maintain trust, they're in the kingdom of God. And so we have to understand what trust is, but by listening, it initially drives the trust forward in our communication process. Okay? Again, because we understand that. Because we let me say that again, because we know the first step in trusting is understanding. And then, of course, you have other areas of trust. So you have understanding, we'll say intent, ability, what we're talking about, and also character, what we're talking about, as well as history and track record. So that's trust, but we're talking about the reason we need to listen, why it's so important. Trust is huge. And then we can go on and on. Another big benefit or reason we want to listen is listening gets rid of, are you ready for this, John? Okay. Emotional resistance. If we're listening properly and we're not judging, because think about it, isn't that what triggers us? Is something triggers us, and then it puts us in an emotional toxic state, typically. Or it doesn't have to be toxic. Well, it could be toxic, good or bad, right? Get manicky or you get angry or whatever. And if we're not listening, emotions take over our feelings and we lean into our own understanding. Right. So listening gets rid of emotional resistance. That's why it's so important to learn. So if you have an anger problem out there, this might help you in the sense of resolving that anger issue. Remember what James said. He said, he said, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and even slower to get angry. Mm-hmm. Huge. There's a communication process. And so, again, if you're struggling, and you know if you are in your soul, that means you feel everything. You might even be, call it self-control, but internally you're bitter, you're angry, you're upset. Doesn't work. And so listening might be what you need, and listening like Jesus. So my point here, listening is important and does so many things, and it's not until someone recognizes it as most essential will things transform in your life. And that's coming to mind. That's Romans 12. I'll be preaching that on Sunday. And so with that, John, do you sense that listening is important?
I hear you.
You hear me? Okay. And so let me say this. This is something, listening is something you can't assume, again. And you must believe, and it can't just happen. Now, let me say that, and let me clear that up. That is the difference between hearing and listening, okay? Assuming versus going after it, seeking God's kingdom. We have to go after listening and work on the skills that accomplishes it. Excuse me. So what does listening require? We just have a few minutes, and then we'll wrap things up. Well, it requires, I'll say 4 things. Awareness, number 1. Number 2, focused attention. Number 3, deliberate practice. And then number 4, I had it on here. Number 4, if I could recall right, you need a good model. Jesus said, follow me. Not only follow me, but Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. Find good models and have them really coach you, guide you, and really work on the skills. And again, I wish we had more time, and maybe we can hit on a couple things here. We got about 3 minutes left, but those 4 requirements are awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and get a good model. And so for instance, awareness. You got to be aware of wisdom. You got to know what all of those different pillars are and start listening for those areas. Number 2, focus attention. We have to stop the milkshaking thinking, if you will. Can I put it that way? And truly get some focus and not crosstalk or not make sure our thoughts are stable as we're listening. And then, of course, we got to manage our feelings well through that so that we can stay focused. Deliberate practice, again, is just get an observer. I love our business meeting. Doug, our core leader of our business team, always brings teams together, and we have people come together, but we have observers watching to see how they're doing in listening to each other. And, of course, I've already said this is that fourth one is make sure you have a good model. And, of course, it's Jesus. Jesus is our model. But in our day and age, find those people that are following Jesus and then get coaching and all that you can gain good information, good instruction, and truly somebody who can influence you in the proper way to really make sure that you have good results and you're effective in your listening.
As the Apostle Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ.
Yes, that's right. And we have to learn that because there's a lot of people out there saying, well, it's just me and God. No, well, we got to listen to, Paul and the leadership that God has given us in our day and age.
Absolutely. So wonderfully weird command number 16, judge not, probably doesn't mean what you thought it meant coming into the program.
Yes. And of course, always listen to gain wisdom. And if you don't know wisdom, you don't know what that is, go after it. Let it be your project.
Absolutely. Join us again next week. Drake already gave you a preview of what we're going to be talking about with Do Not Cast Your Pearls. So we'll be interested to hear what that's going to be all about. Drake, have a great week.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This was fun. Thank you, John.
If you would like to learn more or have any questions or comments, please feel free to email Pastor Drake at wonderfullyweirdliving@gmail.com. To obtain your own copy of the book Wonderfully Weird, please log on to www.wonderfullyweirdliving.com and click on the button that says Buy the Book. Wonderfully Weird Living is a ministry of four-dimensional living, offering wholeness coaching for mind, body, soul, and spirit. Also, would you please prayerfully consider becoming a financial partner to help the Wonderfully Weird Living ministry impact more and more lives? Please log on to www.4dimensionalliving.com. That's 4dimensionalliving.com with the number 4. Now, for Pastor Drake Hunter, I'm John Waters, wishing you a wonderfully weird week.